is going on, everybody? Welcome to the AATBirds special all-season show, which is called Unlocking the Vault. As we begin with an amazing guest, what we do here on Unlocking the Vault is we talk to former Philadelphia Eagles about their time with the team, about their experience in the NFL, and we pick their brains a little bit about their careers and the current NFL landscape. I am Chip. I'm joined by Johnny, and more importantly, sorry, Johnny, I love you and all, but more importantly, tonight, we are joined by the amazing, incredible former Eagles quarterback, former NFL two-time Super Bowl champion, a Pro Bowler, one of the toughest quarterbacks in the history of the game, Mr. Jim McMahon. Jim, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. How's it going?
It's going well. It's going fantastically. We're really excited for you to be our first guest of our second season of this, right, Johnny?
Second season, yes.
So this is very cool. Shout out to all of the great sponsors here at AATBirds. I'm just going to quick run down the list of them. Again, we are sponsored by Statement Games, a fun, free twist on fantasy sports. Thank you. There is a link in the bio. We're sponsored by Symbol, the stock market for sports. Use the promo code AATSports when you sign up. La Terrain Luxury Watches. Use the code AATBirds to check out for 10% off. Funkbrewing.com, the official brewery of them. Of course, we are expanding to AAT Sports _ and Manscaped.com is partnered with AATBirds. Use the code AATBirds for 20% off and free shipping at checkout. Okay, I'm done with sponsors. Johnny, why don't you start us off with Mr. Jim McMahon? I am so excited.
So the big thing when you think about Jim McMahon and the Eagles is you think of the 1991 season. And it was a super crazy season. You know, Randall gets hurt in the first game. You eventually got hurt and were out a number of games as well, and they had to bring in a bunch of quarterbacks. My question to you is, you played for the 85 Bears as well, who has arguably one of the best defenses of all time. You played with the 91 Eagles, arguably one of the best defenses all time. How would you compare those two teams in terms of the defenses?
Well, they're very, very similar defenses. They're both dominant. The front fours are pretty much the same. Linebackers as well, and the DB. So it was a very, very close defense to what I played with in Chicago for sure.
So we're not hearing Chip. So what I will do is I'll ask the next question.
It helps if I turn on my microphone.
Yeah, there you go. Turn your microphone on.
I pushed the mute button. Sorry, we have some home repair things happening. So kind of tying into that Bears defense and the Super Bowl champions, and then you go to a team where there's an established quarterback. How did you navigate that whole thing with Randall in the quarterback room when he came back? I mean, obviously you're a competitive guy, you're a tough guy. How do you go and compete for that role when there is an established quarterback in the mix?
Well, I knew when I first got to Philadelphia that what my role was going to be. You know, Buddy brought me in to, you know, in case something happened to Randall. And 1990, he played the whole season, got us to the playoffs. 91, like you said, he got hurt. I had to play. I was ready to play, and I played for as long as I could. You know, I had a bunch of injuries that year. Had a broken bone and a torn tendon in my throwing arm that I dealt with pretty much all year. Also had a knee injury that year as well. So I missed, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 games. And unfortunately, we only won one of those. We won a couple because I remember being at the halfway point. We were 3-5. And I told Rich Kotite, who was the head coach at the time, I said, hey, we're going to have to win all 8 of these next games or else we're not going to go to the playoffs. And he said, no, we win 10 games, we'll go. And at the time, both Washington and New York Giants were ahead of us in the standings. And we were going to overtake them whether we won 10 or 11 games. So I said, Richie, we got to win them all just to hope to get a wild card spot. I mean, just look at the schedule. And
right.
as it turned out, we ended up winning 10. And we went 10-6, and we didn't go to the playoffs. I know nobody wanted to play us for sure in the playoffs, especially with that defense. But offensively, we struggled quite a bit, especially with the offensive line.
Yeah, and that's a main thing when you look at that year. And you know, my thing is with the injuries and everything that you guys went through, and you know, give us a little bit of what Rich Kotite was that season for you guys, as an offensive play caller? I know the offense struggled, but I know he gets a lot of flack in the later years after that. But what would you say about Rich Kotite, especially that season?
I thought he did a good job for what, the personnel that we had. I mean, like you said, defensively, we're very strong, but offensively, we were struggling at the tackle position. We had one good tackle, Ronnie Heller. He was solid, but our first round draft pick that year he struggled all year long, and my body still feels some of those hits that he gave up on me. But it was a tough job for Richie, but I think he held it together. I enjoyed him because I basically could do what I wanted, especially as far as practice goes. Because I said, I had a torn tendon. I didn't practice at all that year. My arm was pretty much swollen all week long, and then they massage it and then shoot it up for the game on Sunday. But so I had a pretty good year that way. But I was a little bummed we didn't get to the playoffs because I knew we had a chance with that defense.
So let me ask you this, because obviously the game has changed since you played, specifically in the terms of protecting the quarterback. Obviously, we know head injuries are a severe problem, and concussions and all those things. But what are your current thoughts on the landscape of the NFL? Are they protecting too much? Is it taking away from the game? What are your thoughts on how the game currently looks?
Well, I don't watch much of the current game. I saw a little bit of the Kansas City game the other night, just because Andy Reid is a good friend of mine. He was there in Philly for quite a while as well. I love playing the game. I'm not a big fan of watching it. And, what they're doing, I understand what they're trying to do as far as protecting the QBs, but some of it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, some guys get flagged, some guys don't. You can't really hit them anywhere.
Right.
So it's got to be a pretty nice feeling sitting back there knowing you can step into throws and not get your head taken off.
And that's a big thing. Like you can kind of look at it this way too. If the rules were what they are now to when you played, how much more healthy of a career you would have had, and how much longer of a career could you possibly have had, and what you have put up in terms numbers wise, the way that the quarterbacks are protected nowadays.
Well, it probably wouldn't have helped me much anyway, because I probably would have taken off and ran a few times. I wasn't one to run out of bounds or slide either, because you got hit when you slid anyway. So I'm going to make them tackle me.
I love that. I'm sorry. I when we started watching football, I mean, it was still a game where you could hit somebody. And it was funny. I saw a video of like Tom Brady back in his second or third year, and he gets absolutely leveled and destroyed. He pops right back up. But that same hit today, that player is getting suspended, thrown out of the game. So do you feel that at least the NFL is doing a better job protecting with the head injuries specifically?
Well, like I said, they're trying to do the right thing, but this is a violent game. And when you butt your head into people, linemen especially, they hit their heads pretty much every play.
Yeah.
I don't care how good the helmets get. Your brain is suspended in liquid. There's nothing that's attached. It's attached to your spinal cord. That's it. So when you have these collisions, your brain is going to hit the side of your head. There's no way to stop that. But what they're doing now, I think they take them into the tent. I don't even know what they do in that tent.
No one does. It's a big mystery.
But some guys come out and they're back on the field. Other guys come out and they can't play anymore. So I don't know what's going on in the tent. But those things take a while to heal. Some of them heal rather quickly, but other ones take weeks and months at a time. You bruise your brain, it's going to take a while to heal.
True.
Yeah, and one question, because I know I kind of want to transition over to Veterans Stadium and playing on basically that concrete stadium. What was it like playing at the stadium, even playing in front of those fans, because it's 700 level and the raucous and how loud they were. What were your time there and your memories about playing at the Vet?
Well, I know the field wasn't one of the best fields in the league. They had those seams down by where they had the baseball infield. I remember a receiver from Chicago. I think he blew both knees out on one play because he hit one of those seams.
Willie Galt.
There was a lot of fields like that back then. You know, the Astrodome was. I mean, they had everything in there: football games, they had rodeo, they had truck pulls. I mean, there was games that we played. You can still see the concrete because they didn't have enough felt to put over the concrete.
Right.
So it's amazing that these guys aren't hurting more than they are, the older players.
That's true. So we get the ability to get comments that roll in while we're live. And Adam, one of our great fans, would like to know, what is your favorite moment as a member of the Bears and or the Eagles?
Well, just playing. Playing was a lot of fun. I love playing the game. I love being around the guys in the locker room. That's what everybody misses when they retire, just hanging out with the boys. And there's a lot of great humor in the football world. You know, there's a lot of funny people, but they don't get to see that. They usually just see that in the locker rooms and meetings and stuff like that. And that's what I miss. I miss just, the humor of the guys and just, just a bunch of people trying to achieve one goal. And that's try to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
And, the one question I want, it's not the Eagles, but I do want to, touch on the great Walter Payton. You did have time playing with him. And what kind of you can even say teammate, what kind of person was he? Because you hear everything, about him and just, what kind of a person was Walter Payton? Teammate and or player?
He was just a great guy to be around. Very, he was a big prankster. He loved shooting guns. I mean, I don't know how many guns he had, but he liked blowing off M80s as you're walking out to practice and just having a lot of fun. He used to answer the phones at Hallis Hall because he had that really high voice. And a lot of people thought he was a secretary. He just answered the phone, Chicago Bears, and then he transferred the call. And, he was just a fun-loving guy, just great to be around, and a hell of a football player. Just it was a pleasure just to watch him do what he did. And my first couple of years in the league, our offensive line was not very good. Mm-hmm. And Walter, I'd hand him the ball and watch him make a 30-yard run that only gained 2 yards. He'd go from sideline to sideline, bouncing off guys, and he just did not like to be tackled. He's still probably the strongest guy I've ever met in my life. He's about 5'10", 210 pounds of just rock, and just a fun guy, great teammate.
Well, speaking of that, who is your favorite player during your career to throw the ball to? A guy that was just easy for you to find open and hit them with a pass.
I've been asked that a lot, and
okay.
The answer I always give is Roy Green.
Okay.
Roy Green came to the Eagles late in his career. He's probably in his 14th year or 15th year, whatever it was. And I remember the first game that he played with us. I think he caught 7 balls for 100-something yards. I mean, he was just an ultimate professional. The guy knew what defenses. He knew how to get open. He could not run me when he came to the Eagles, but. He was always open, and he'd catch the ball. I mean, you got to love a guy that's going to catch the ball. You know when you throw it, he's going to catch it. And that was always fun playing with Roy. But I had great receivers when I was there as well. Freddie Barnett, Cal yep. Williams, Keith Jackson was our tight end. I mean, we had some good talent. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to get him the ball all the time.
Yeah, and that was a big thing, the offensive line. But even another player that you guys played with, he kind of, in this day and age, if he played now, he would probably set records, would be Keith Byers as a type of receiving back and, what he could do on the field. But yeah, you're right. You play with a lot of talented players with the Eagles. There's just the offensive line just wasn't giving you guys enough time. And unfortunately, that was kind of that's what you need. You need offensive line. The offensive defensive lines are the key parts, the key cogs in an NFL team, because you can look around the league. And I say this all the time, and everyone was talking about, the Cleveland Browns have all these top picks, and you look and you always say, well, if you don't have an offensive line or a defensive line, if you don't start with that, you're not going to be successful in the NFL.
No doubt about it. That's where the games are won and lost. Even today,
yeah, we said it.
You can control the line of scrimmage, you're going to end up winning the game usually.
It's funny because we're Andy Reid disciples, and you mentioned Andy, but we learned when Andy Reid was here, games exactly like you said were won and lost with the offensive and defensive line. So, I mean, obviously doing a show like this where we're talking to former players who've been super successful in the NFL. I mean, like we read off your resume, a 2-time Super Bowl champ, a Pro Bowler, part of that, Chicago Bears team that was just so cool in the 80s. But for you personally, what is your legacy? What did you want to be? How do you want to be remembered as an NFL player? How do you want your career to be remembered?
That I won. I won a hell of a lot more games than I lost, and I
love that.
Whether or not I was 100%, that was probably never. But if I could walk out on the field, I was going to play. And I think guys around me in my huddle realized, what I was going through, and they tend to play a little harder when you're putting everything on the line. So I'd like to be remembered as a guy that just gave everything he had when he played, and he won. Was a winner.
One of the last questions I want to ask you, and it's something that I have read about and, trying to do some research on it and trying to learn as much as I can, is about recovery and with NFL players. And the one thing is I'll see a lot of players with the use of cannabis and, physically helping them basically not having to use painkillers and use other type of forms of trying to get themselves, feeling a lot better. What kind of impact would you say that has had? Any experience, anything like that? Because I've seen a bunch of former NFL players that have, they attest to it.
No, there's no doubt about it. It's the best thing on the planet. I mean, it's God's gift to us. I mean, it's an anti-inflammatory. It's a neuroprotectant. It solves a lot of different medical issues, but we've been lied to for over 100 years about it. The government had a patent on this thing for the last 75 years. They knew how good it was, but big pharma pretty much runs this country. So unless you're taking their pills, they're not going to be very happy with you. So I'm glad. I think the league is changing the rules on marijuana, but I'm not positive. I haven't been keeping up with it, but it'd be a hell of a lot better for the guys than taking these painkillers that they've been taking for years.
Right.
And a lot of stuff that, to get them ready for games and what they've had to be put through. And, firsthand with seeing it in locker rooms and, me reading and hearing some of the things. It's just, trying to use something like this to, get the health of the people. That's what's most important. If they say what they want to say is what's most important is the health of their athletes, then you need to start going and actually proving that's the big thing.
Well, all these pills, they're very addictive. These guys, it ruins a lot of guys' lives just taking these damn pills. They pump you up with so much stuff to make you play, and then you can't sleep at night. You don't sleep for 2 or 3 days after a game. And what's wrong with going home and rolling one fatty up and getting some sleep?
And I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, the addictive part of it all, because when you talk about things like painkillers, it is very addictive. And then you combine it with, the head injuries and the trauma. And like you mentioned, it's a physical sport. It's warriors running into each other play after play. So I do think that it's very interesting, and it deserves much more studying than it's being done. The idea of using cannabis, which, as you mentioned, is natural and is, it's much healthier. So one final question. Let me ask you this. We, after retiring, what has these past many years looked like? What do you have going on, whether it's business, whether it's speaking engagements? What is it that keeps you going day to day at this point?
Well, I've been out 26 years now, so it's football's a long way in my past, and it's basically now I do a lot of charity stuff, do a lot of stuff with our military. I partnered up with Kyle Turley, an ex-ball player, Evan Britton, an ex-ball player. Ricky Williams was also part of our group, but he's gone on to do his own thing. Open up our own cannabis line. It's called Revenant. We're in California right now. Hopefully, when the laws change, we'll be all over the country. So that's been taking up some time, and then I'm just now getting over another one of my. I had another surgery, or actually 3 surgeries the last month. I had a bad ankle that I played on a broken ankle for years, and finally had to get it fixed, and ended up getting a couple of infections. So I had to spend 8 days in the hospital, have 2 more operations. I've been on my couch now for the last month and a half. I still can't walk out on my foot, but I finally got the walking boot on it, and now it's just whether or not I can take the pain to walk on it. It's still too sore to do that. But other than that, just I've got 5 grandkids now. They kind of keep me busy as well. So life's been good.
That's amazing. I mean, again, we appreciate you so much for spending just even a couple of minutes with us doing this. Is there anything else that you would like to share, whether it's about your NFL career, about your, anything that you want to share? You have the forum, you have the floor, my friend.
Well, I just want to say I enjoyed my time in Philly. I know the Philly fans can be a little bit brutal on you. I remember the first couple of games that I went to when I first got there. It'd be the same 10 people. They knew where the players parked, and they'd be overhead, as we're walking in the stadium, yelling, "You guys suck!" All the things they say in Philly. And I'm like, "Hey, we're the home team. We don't care. You guys still suck." So that was kind of a little different, having your hometown fans telling you sucked every time you got there on Sunday. But if you won the game, they were a little bit happier the next week.
That's it. I think we hear all the time that Philly fans are the worst. We hear all the time that throwing snowballs at Santa, that still gets brought up. I mean, but the positive about being a Philadelphia Eagle is if you give us your best, we'll give you our best. And I think you still see that today. And you look at things that are happening in the current NFL where players are throwing referees under the bus and fans are throwing. I mean, you don't see that in Philly. We'll love you if you try, and we'll tell you why you suck if you don't. So I think that still holds true.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I don't mind, getting yelled at when I, had a bad game. But, if we're winning, just leave us alone.
Exactly.
Well, again, Jim, we appreciate it so much. Again, Jim McMahon, he's all over social media now. You can find his Twitter handle. I believe it's at Jim McMahon, correct? Nice and easy.
I think so. Yeah,
at Jim McMahon, yes.
So I don't handle that myself. So
you got people for that. We respect that.
I care less what everybody does all day long.
And again, we are the All About the Birds team. We have the AAT Sports Network. We have all of our great sponsors in the link. Make sure you are liking, subscribing, and sharing. Thank you to the comments that rolled in. We wanted to give Jim his time here, so we wanted to make sure that we didn't, the comments are there. We appreciate it. But again, this is the Inside the Vault show. It's going to be happening all off season. And we end every show here on the AAT Sports Network with a very happy and a positive "Go Birds." I don't know if you can say. We can also say, "the Bears." If I don't know which one you want to go with here, it's Jim. It's really up to you. You played for both.
I was just say, "Go Birds."
There you go,
my man. My man. We appreciate you.
I don't want to get booed when I show up in Philly next year. I end up at the airport quite a bit on some layovers, and my old car dealer always brings me a cheesesteak when I'm sitting there for a couple hours. So it's been great.
All right. Well, then, if that's the case, I have to ask the real $1 million question before we let you go. And there is a secret third answer: Pat's or Geno's?
What's the other one? Is it downtown that I remember? It was at a food mart or something. I can't remember.
All right. So there's D'Alessandro's. There's
either or for me. To me that it's pretty much the same. I can't remember. I used to eat a cheesesteak before every game when I was there, and I can't even remember who was supplying them. But I'd always have one right before kickoff, and then another one at halftime. So I miss my cheesesteaks.
Well, anytime you're here, we are more than happy to provide you with some of those delicious, delicious cheesesteaks.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Again, that's Jim. I'm Chip. That's Johnny. We thank you guys for tuning in tonight. And go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.